FM, online, on DAB. This is BBC Radio Cambridgeshire.
But our top story this morning, 101, the non-emergency phone line for Cambridgeshire Police, is falling short of its targets. Later today, the independent panel which oversees the work of the Police and Crime Commissioner, it's called the Police and Crime Panel, is gathering to discuss the situation that's been getting consistently worse throughout the year. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of these numbers and the alleged problems, let me ask you this. If you wanted to get in touch with the police and it wasn't an emergency, it wasn't a 999 situation, what would you do? Our reporter Jess Martin has taken to the streets of Cambridge to find out.
Well, I'd call 999 if it's how bad it was.
But if it's not an emergency?
I'm not sure.
It's a difficult one. You call 101. Did you know that?
I can remember it in the back there somewhere, yes.
What number would you call?
I'd call the non-emergency helpline number.
Which is?
07. I don't know.
101. Non-emergency. If it was a fire or someone being attacked, then I'd phone 999.
I'd call 911. No, 111.
So you're not entirely sure what you do?
Not massively, no. What do you do?
Phone 151.
151?
Yep.
What does that do then?
That gets you through to the local police station. Without... No, it doesn't, actually, not that. 151. I'm not sure now.
Who would you call?
Ghostbusters.
Yeah, don't call the Ghostbusters, by the way. Great at ghosts, terrible at crimes. A bit of confusion there, I think it's fair to say, in Cambridge. That was Jess Martin asking the questions there. Well, today's report being presented at the Police and Crime Panel will highlight that when people do call 101, the service they're getting isn't always at the standard you'd expect from an emergency service. Johnny D's got the details.
101 is the police's non-emergency number. You should call 101 instead of 999 to report a crime that doesn't require an emergency response. For example, your car has been stolen, your property has been burgled, or to report a minor traffic collision. If a crime is in progress or you're faced with a life-threatening situation, 999 is the number to call. The report that will be discussed at the meeting later today says that the call initially gets answered quickly, but then gets put on hold, sometimes for up to an hour, and it's getting worse. The longest wait in April was 13 minutes. By September, this had increased to 59 minutes. Critics say this doesn't instill people with confidence in the emergency service and does little for the reputation of the police. Cambridge City Labour councillor Anne Sinnott, who visited the 101 call centre last week, says staff put the inadequacies down to service changes and job losses since 2011. The Police and Crime Commissioner and Cambridgeshire's Police Constable say, "We are both in agreement that the current standard of service is not acceptable and there needs to be considerable improvement."
That was Johnny D. Well, let's talk to Cambridge-based political blogger Richard Taylor, who's going to be at this meeting of the Police and Crime Panel later today. Richard, this is something that you've taken quite an interest in. Why?
Good morning, Dottie. Well, yeah, I first knew of the problem when I was observing a police authority meeting back in 2011, when the issue was first reported, when the police first admitted that they were having problems answering their phones. So this has been going on for a very long time, and I'm taking interest because I think it's really important, and like the police answering the phones is a very basic part of their job, and it's something that's really important, even on a non-emergency basis. They've got to answer the phones when people call them, because otherwise people lose confidence in the police. If you can't get in touch with the police on a non-emergency matter, then you lose confidence that the police will be there and available if you need them in an emergency.
So these new figures, they're showing that the initial pickup of the 101 is actually doing quite well, but it's the waiting times then. Some people have waited for nearly an hour. What do you make of that?
Well, it's excellent that something has improved since 2011, that the police are now answering these calls. So at least you're going to get some kind of screening of these calls. So hopefully the ones that do require a quicker response are being dealt with. But then if people are just trying to report a crime, then they're they might get put on hold for up to an hour. And I think that's going to deter people from reporting crime. So the police aren't going to find out as much as they otherwise would have about what's going on.
What do you think's caused the problem?
Well, back in 2011, as Councillor Sinnott said, there was some reorganisation, some staff changes. They made the call centre start operating as the switchboard, so that the phone calls that come in to particular people in the police, which is a large organisation, are going through the switchboard. So. And this issue's been one for the Police and Crime Commissioner since he came into office in November 2012. He knew that what changes had caused the problem, and he had various options to address it. And he actually said, as soon as he came into office, that he'd made a decision and he'd solved the problem. And he kept telling us that for quite a few months. But clearly he hasn't solved the problem. Hopefully the panel later today will be able to help him understand what the problem is, help him ask for more statistics and more information from the police on exactly how bad the problem is. Things like, we know that the worst cases, people are waiting on hold for up to an hour, but we don't know how many people are waiting, say, for over 5 minutes, over 10 minutes. We don't really have a very good picture of what's going on, and hopefully they can help him look at the options he's got in front of him to solve the problem. Like, one thing I'd like him to look at is perhaps more online reporting. There are some things, like, say, if you've had your mobile phone stolen, or you've had some minor damage to your car while it's been parked, you don't really need to take up the time of somebody in the police. You could make that report online. It's largely probably mostly just a formality to get a reference number for insurance for most cases, and then the police can have that information there. They can look at it, and if there's a series of crimes, or then they've got the statistics and things are reported, so they can act on collections of crime groups and crime.
Online crime reporting, that's an interesting idea. Richard, stay on the line there. We've got Gary from Guyherne who's given me a call this morning. Gary, what's your experience of calling 101?
Well, I won't actually use the 101 number. First of all, you very often, as we've heard, get hanging on for an extraordinary length of time. But the other indignity of it is that you then have to pay for the call. And I know it's only 15p per call, but, you know, why should someone who's performing a public service have to pay for the privilege of doing it? I think it's ridiculous, and calls like that should all be free.
Richard did just mention the idea of online crime reporting. Is that something you'd prefer?
Yeah, that would probably be an option. Certainly do a lot of, just with computers, so that would probably be easier, quicker, and certainly cheaper.
Okay, Gary, good to talk to you this morning. Thanks for giving me a call. Richard, I suppose the problem that I would put to you is that the police has had to deal with budget cuts. Their budgets are unlikely to go up in the future. Can they get this better without more money?
Well, hopefully online reporting would save money. It would save somebody having to talk to people in many cases of reporting. And this online reporting isn't new. It happens in other places with other police and crime commissioners have brought it in. So hopefully our police and crime commissioner could just review what's happening elsewhere in the country. And if there are systems which are working well elsewhere, perhaps saving time and money elsewhere, he could bring it to Cambridgeshire.
Richard, it's something we will suggest to him later on. He'll be on the show just after 8 o'clock.
BBC Radio Cambridgeshire.
That was Richard Taylor, who is a political blogger based in Cambridge. An hour still to go with me, Dottie McLeod. So still to come, you'll be hearing from your police and crime commissioner, Sir Graham Bright. The time people are waiting on hold on the police's 101 number has doubled since March. The police say it's not good enough. Sir Graham Bright says it's not good enough. So what's he going to do about it? You'll find out very soon.
Dottie McLeod on BBC Radio Cambridgeshire.
Our top story this morning, though, a dedicated group who desperately want to help people but who feel demoralised. Those are the words used by a Cambridge Labour councillor to describe the employees of the 101 service, the police's non-emergency phone centre. It's been criticised for leaving people on hold, sometimes for up to an hour. And some callers to this programme this morning agree.
I waited over an hour.
You didn't?
Certainly did. And I had to get the police, and I was stuck on the phone. I thought, now what do I do now? I kept waiting, and I kept waiting. After an hour, I said to the young officer, I said, do you realise you've kept me on the phone for over an hour. So, he said. I said, well, someone has to pay for that. That's me.
But the other indignity of it is that you then have to pay for the call, and I know it's only 15p per call, but, you know, why should someone who's performing a public service have to pay for the privilege of doing it? I think it's ridiculous.
Although the last experience I did have a couple of months ago, non-emergency, was improved actually. They did pick up quite quickly.
That's just a few of the people who have given us a call this morning on this subject. Well, political blogger Richard Taylor spoke to me earlier as well. He said although there had been improvements to the 101 service, they weren't extensive enough.
Well, it's excellent that something has improved since 2011, that the police are now answering these calls. So at least you're going to get some kind of screening of these calls. So hopefully the ones that do require a quicker response are being dealt with. But then if people are just trying to report a crime, then they might get put on hold for up to an hour. I think that's going to deter people from reporting crime. So the police aren't going to find out as much as they otherwise would have about what's going on.
Well, joining me now is the Labour councillor for the Petersfield area of Cambridge, Anne Sinnott, who has visited the 101 call centre in Peterborough. And what impression did you come away with after visiting the call centre?
The overriding impression I came away with was that this is a highly motivated workforce who were somewhat demoralised because they felt they weren't able to really carry out the job that they wanted to do, which was to serve the public.
And why do they feel that they can't do the job that they're there to do?
OK, well, if I just put it in some context, from a high point in 2005, when there was apparently 75 equivalent full-time posts, 90% of calls were answered within 30 seconds. Now, in May 2011, the switchboard was closed. Now there are 59 equivalent full-time posts, and on every shift, 4 to 5 of those people are delegated to answer all incoming calls and to triage them, to sort them to other operators. And it's at that point, after they're sorted to the other operators, that the delays are occurring. The unescapable conclusion that I came to was that there simply aren't enough staff.
So I would guess that your suggestion for improving this, they need more bodies, don't they?
Yes. And I would imagine ideally to reopen the switchboard, because presumably that's a lower grade operator, and then all the specialist operators who are, I understand, trained, would then be doing the job that they're employed to do.
Well, let's talk to the Police and Crime Commissioner for Cambridgeshire, Sir Graham Bright. He joins me now. Sir Graham, good morning. You're hearing Anne Sinnott there say that there's just not enough staff in this call centre. Is that true, do you think?
I mean, the council visited the call centre on one occasion. We've been wrestling with this for some time, and Chief Counsel, myself, all the staff obviously involved. One of the things we've done, which he probably wasn't aware of, is there is a rollover. So we're using facilities for the main 999 centre as well. So if there is a backup, there is a rollover. So we haven't just got one switchboard. That's important. The other thing to say, I understand what she's saying about morale of the staff. They are fantastic. One thing I can tell you is on the national figures, we are number 3 in terms of the speed in which we answer.
Well, yes, but Sir Graham, is that not the speed in which you answer, not necessarily the length of time that people are then put on hold?
The important thing is to answer, because some people do dial 101 instead of 999, and it's absolutely essential that we answer quickly. And if that is an emergency, it is dealt with. So I've been insistent about that, and that is happening. We're answering certainly within the 30 seconds. In fact, most average calls are answered within 7 or 8 seconds.
And there's no doubt that is good news, but you've then got people waiting on the line, hanging on the telephone for 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 59 minutes.
Well, that's just almost a one-off. That isn't the average. The average wait is much, much lower than that. It's 3 or 4 minutes. I, like you and like everyone else, think it's a disgrace, and I've been wrestling with this to get it right. There's lots of things we're looking at. We're looking at callback facility. We're looking at diverting some of those calls so that people can direct dial to officers, because at the moment everyone goes through 101. Our new Metis system is going to help us on that. We're looking at online self-service so that people can go online and report instances. And of course we're also looking at collaborating with our two neighbours in trying to, although we are actually better than they are at the moment, but we're looking at producing a better service by collaborating with them. And I think all of these things, and we've taken advice from BT, we've taken advice from John Lewis in order to sort of make sure that we can deal with this, because I do not want people hanging on the phone. They are there to help the police, and we've got to help them.
I mean, I appreciate what you say about, for example, the 59-minute wait on hold being a one-off, but people have been waiting for long times. We heard from George in Norton Longville earlier, who just the other week said that he was waiting on the phone for over an hour. Is there anything you'd like to say, Sir Graham, to people who have been in that position?
Well, I'd like to apologise, first of all, because it's something that I don't want to tolerate. And I have to tell you that neither do the police. The Chief Constable is with me on this. We're putting resources into it. Just taking on more staff is not necessarily the way we can overcome this. It's utilising modern technology. And the other thing I have to say to the councillor is, I'm protecting, because the one thing that the public tell me all the time, they want to see police on the front line. I'm protecting those. And I don't want to get rid of police in order to put people in a call centre. So we've got to use modern technology to make sure it works.
We have had calls this morning, Sir Graham, suggesting that 101 should in fact be a free number to call. Now, I know that you do, when you call, it is only a one-off fee, it's 15 pence.
That's
but
right.
If you are providing a public service, you're an emergency service, should you have to pay to call that number?
Well, you know, we get 30,000 calls a month on the 101 system. That would be a budgetary consideration if we had to do that. There's a huge number of calls going through, which is why we're looking at the direct dial, because at the moment everyone dials 101, even some of the police dial 101 to get through. And we've got to have a direct dial operation where if people are dealing with a particular police officer, they can dial them directly. That will really speed things up. All of this is being looked at, not just looked at, but we're moving towards doing it. What I don't want to do is invest huge sums of money into this now if we're going to go on to collaboration. So we do have to sort of pace ourselves a little bit.
Anne Sinnott, Labour councillor in Cambridge. What do you think of those measures that Sir Graham Bright says that they're being explored to make this better?
I have deep concerns about all of it, really.
About online reporting, for example, about more collaboration with other forces?
Possibly online reporting in the case of crime. It's divided into two. Calls into 101 centre. There are either incidents in which something is in process and needs to be attended to, or they are crimes that have already happened, in which case they are just being logged. That latter category, yes, that would work. The first wouldn't. I have doubts about. Sir Graham says that we are the best of hearts and beds, the two counties we're going to collaborate with. Well, that's really worrying. One county that's operating not well at all, collaborating with two other counties are doing even worse. Some shared services are good and work well, but I'm not sure that a 101 call centre is one of those. The answer seems to me is bodies on the ground, and our police service generally have been cut, and this service has also been cut, and presumably collaboration is with a view to making savings. And this is about safety.
We have heard criticisms, just on a kind of a sideways point on this almost. We have heard criticisms from some people and from some callers this morning that Sir Graham Bright likes averages. And, he said there that, in fact, these, waiting 59 minutes on the phone is very out of the ordinary and that the average is much lower. Surely just no one should be waiting for 59 minutes, not even one person.
I don't think anyone should be waiting for even 10 minutes. I've spoken to many people in Cambridge who have had prolonged waits. This is why a switchboard would be very good, because they can, because certainly during the day they get lots of calls that shouldn't even come into the police or 101 service. So a switchboard, sorting calls and then routing them to people who are specially trained to deal with them. That seems to me to be the way forward.
So, Graham, is there any possibility of bringing back a switchboard like Anne says there?
No. We've got to work with modern technology. And having a switchboard is just another sort of hurdle to jump. We need to, particularly on the calls that are an emergency nation, deal with it immediately. That's why we're doing what we're doing, because if you've got a 101 call of someone reporting someone breaking into their house, or they can see someone, about to be mugged, we need to know about it instantly. And so that is why we do it that way. What we've got to try and do is iron out some of the secondary stuff where people are passed on, and that is what I'm talking about. And I think the council also talked about people being overstressed. Well, working in a call centre is stressful. It's not the number of calls that causes stress. It's the things you have to deal with. And I'm very pleased that we do look after our staff. There are facilities to counsel, to help, to give them proper breaks and everything else. So that I think is an issue she put in her press statement, which I think sort of goes in the wrong direction. We are very good at looking after our staff, and we'll continue to do so. But what we want to do, and we're working with them.
So, Graham Bright, we're going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid. That's our Police and Crime Commissioner for Cambridgeshire. Thank you for joining us this morning. And you also heard from the Labour Councillor for Petersfield in Cambridge, Councillor Anne Sinnott.
BBC Radio Cambridgeshire.